Welcome to this special edition of Lead Quick. It is special because we want to peep into the minds of the freshly and newly baked President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We are doing this because it is an established norm that by carefully listening, observing, and analyzing people's words, we can discern their goals, priorities, and possible courses of action. So in this video, we will be analyzing the words of Mr. President, interpreting his verbal and non-verbal cues vis-a-vis his past antecedents. Before we dive deep into the analysis of the speech as it concerns the economy and other matters, let us start with politics, because as you know, everything revolves around politics. Everything begins and ends with politics. And as you will also know, in politics, politicians can be ambiguous as they are likely to hide certain information using words. For example, in his address, President Bat said, and I quote, "My supporters, I thank you. To those who voted otherwise, I extend my hand across the political divide. I ask you to grasp it in national affinity and brotherhood." For me, that is Bola Tinubu now, political coloration has faded away. All I see are Nigerians. May we uphold these fitting and excellent notions as the new Nigerian ideal. What do you make of this statement? Especially when the campaign of Peter Obi mantra, the Labour Party candidate's mantra was New Nigeria is possible. So can we infer that Mr. President is preaching to the obedient, or was he saying something that is totally different? Whatever you think, let us know in the comment section. Was the president talking about the obedience? Was he reaching out to the obedience, or was he saying something different? Let us know in the comment section, and we'll be back, after this short break to give you details about the speech of Mr. President and what, the speech will reveal to us. Areas that the president, seem to have a hold of what he intends to do, and areas that we suspect that it's not been totally straightforward with Nigerian people. Please don't go anywhere. Kindly subscribe to this channel. Like this video, comment and share this video so that other people can be aware of some of the policy direction of the new president.
Budget that I've glimpsed before I assume office, and what I've heard is that no provision is there for fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is gone.
Thank you for joining us back. Now, very quickly, another of the president's statement that reveals some red flag is when he said, "We are here to further mend and heal this nation, not tear and injure it." In this vein, may I offer a few comments regarding the election that brought us to this juncture. It was a hard-fought contest, and it was also fairly won. Since the advent of the Fourth Republic, Nigeria has not held an election of better quality. That was Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu speaking. Now, for us at Lead Quick, that the election was hard fought is true, but that it was fairly won, and that since the Fourth Republic, Nigeria has not held an election of better quality is kind of enmeshed in deep waters. And we are here to unpack, the water for you so that you can have clarity of purpose and you can plan how to go about your business. But first, let us say that the election is still being contested. The election is still being contested in court. So it cannot be said to have been fairly won until the court says otherwise. The inauguration of the president that we have just witnessed is the fulfillment of the law which requires INEC to announce a winner. And after which INEC has announced the winner takes office as provided in our extant laws. However, until all pending case in court is dispensed with, there can be no fairness in the victory. In other words, INEC is the first arbiter in an election, while the Supreme Court is the final arbiter in a presidential election. On the other hand, the president could be said to be right because fairly is defined as to a certain extent or to a certain degree. And so that is to say, to the degree of INEC's mandate, the presidential election was won. But we now know that we will have to wait for the final arbiter to confirm or reject the decision of the court. Now, as we dive deeper into the purpose of this video, let me remind you once again that the president is known to be a strategic person. And from our research, there are some negative attributes that strategic leaders exhibit that we need to be mindful of. If we must hold our president accountable, if we must work together for a new Nigeria, like the president have said. Now, one of these negative attitudes is the lack of clarity and loss of motion without movement. Now, we're not saying the president's speech is lacking in clarity, but like we have just talked about, the election is still being contested. Another negative attitude that we need to watch out from our president is resistance to changing dynamics, overconfidence that might lead to catastrophic outcomes, short-term thinking that might jump, or rather that might trump long-term benefits, as well as lack of transparency that might result in exclusion and internal wrangling within his administration or within his party or within the country. And so these are attributes that we need to watch out for from the president so that we can hold him accountable the more. So let's go now deeply into the inaugural address by Mr. President. From his inaugural address, what can we see? What can we discern? What is it telling us? Where is the direction that the president intends to go to? First, let me say that there are some quite positives, some quite positive insights in this address by Mr. President. But let me also tell you that the president also exhibited some of those attributes, some of those negative attributes that we had identified as red flags. For example, let us now look into the statement regarding the issue of fuel subsidy. Now, the president said, and I quote, "Subsidy can no longer justify its ever-increasing cost in the wake of drying resources. We shall instead rechannel the funds into better investment in public infrastructure, education, healthcare, and jobs that will materially improve the lives of millions." End of quote. Now, while the president made the issue of removal of fuel subsidy a campaign issue during the electionary process, understanding the cannibalistic nature of the upstream petroleum sector in Nigeria should have made Mr. President to wait until he has consulted widely with relevant stakeholders. He should have waited until he would have been able to create a process for the removal of subsidy in such a manner that it will not create hoarding by the petroleum marketers or panic buying by the consumers. For the most part, majority of Nigerians agree that fuel subsidy should go. In fact, past presidents agreed as well that fuel subsidy should go. But the challenge has been the mode or approach of removing it. And if we are good students of history, we remember that the new president, Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, were part of the protesters against the administration of Goodluck Jonathan removing fuel subsidy. However, the hasty statement on the inaugural day is akin to overconfidence, which has led to catastrophic outcomes as we pointed out earlier as part of the red flags that we need to watch out from the president. And that action has resulted in fuel queues rearing their ugly heads across the country. The president said, and I quote, "Our constitution and laws give us a nation on paper. We must work harder at bringing these noble documents to life by strengthening the bonds of economic collaboration, social cohesion, and cultural understanding. Let us develop a shared sense of fairness and equity. The South must not only seek good for itself, but must understand that its interests are served when good comes to the North. The North must see the South likewise." Now, we can confirm to you that the president used to be an apostle of restructuring until he co-founded the APC and they won power in 2015. But it is interesting to see and to hear the president say that our constitution and laws gives us a nation on paper. The implication of that statement is that the president does not believe that the constitution and laws setting up Nigeria is firm or strong enough to bind us together. It means that the restructuring personality of the president is speaking at this point. And so we should watch out to see how he intends to develop a shared sense of fairness and equity, especially when he had started with Muslim ticket. Will he devolve more powers to the state as against the current status quo, where the federal government have more responsibilities than the state, and which is not supposed to be so? Fortunately, one of the key challenges that has bedeviled our economy, which is the fault of the Constitution squarely giving more power to the federal government instead of the state government, is the issue of power generation. Now, even as President Buhari, the predecessor of President Bat, has signed the devolution of power generation to states, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has promised to double power generation, transmission, and distribution by encouraging states to develop local sources. How far will he go is what we should watch out to see. Because if the restructuring personality of the president is talking about the need to create shared values and shared responsibilities, then he should be able to do the needful in ensuring that the states have the resources and the enabling environment to be able to improve their power generation capabilities. Now, one innovative aspect of the president's speech is when he said, and I quote, "Our government will continue to take proactive steps such as championing a credit culture to discourage corruption while strengthening the effectiveness and efficiency of the various anti-corruption agencies." End of quote. Now, all over the world, and this is very, very important, that the president is making this statement, because all over the world, developed economies run a credit culture, a credit economy. And therefore, it is a big win, I can say, for small businesses and for households if this policy pronouncement is adequately implemented. However, there are basic infrastructures that requires to be put in place to ensure an effective implementation of, running a credit economy. For instance, the president will need to spice up the banking sector, which has refused to deepen lending to the microeconomic space and enhance credit guarantee mechanism for small businesses and households. Now, another interesting aspect of the president's speech is when he said, and I quote again, "Our government also shall work with the National Assembly to fashion an omnibus Jobs and Prosperity Bill. This bill will give our administration the policy space to embark on labor-intensive infrastructural improvements, encourage light industry, and provide improved social services for the poor, the elderly, and the vulnerable. End of quote. Now, these are beautiful, beautiful policy pronouncements. But for us, this will be a game changer for many youths, as it will create much needed jobs in the construction and engineering space. But very quickly, as we wrap up this video, let us inform you that the president has promised to introduce commodity exchange boards that will guarantee minimal prices for certain crops and animal products, as well as introduce a nationwide program for storage and other facilities to reduce spoilage and wastage. Now, these are some low-hanging fruits, so to say, that the president can quickly, leverage on to jumpstart the economy and move towards achieving the 6% GDP growth rate that he has projected for his administration. But what caught my attention in this statement is when the president talked about his plans to produce the livestock sector, to introduce the livestock sector to best modern practices as a way of minimizing the perennial conflict over land and water resources in the sector. Now, you will also agree with me that this is another one quick and low-hanging fruit that the president can quickly implement to turn around the socio-economic dynamics of the country. Because you know that the issue of cattle moving across one location to the other has been a major issue, eventually throwing up the matter of Ruga, which became a divisive topic for Nigerians. And so, if the president could, quickly turn around this narrative, I think it will be a very big plus for his administration and a big benefit to Nigerians across board. Now, could this mean that the president is ready to succeed where his predecessor, Muhammad Buhari, failed? As it is said, while we congratulate the president for a poetic speech, we want him to understand, we want him to remember that the devil is in the detail. Until we come your way again, thank you, and don't forget to subscribe, to like, share this video so that other people can get more enlightened about the government's policy direction and how they can prepare their businesses and their families to take advantage of the opportunities that it will create.